Oh, Jill Winebanks, if there is a God and there is justice in America, this indictment will happen during this segment. Good morning.
Good morning, and I'm certainly hoping that you are right. I can't wait.
Well, I quoted you before about the whole, Nixon was a president that became a criminal, and Trump is a lifelong criminal that became president, right? And you tweeted, you said in praising the accuracy and credibility of John Dean and saying Michael Cohen could be as believable as a witness, I erred in saying John was convicted of perjury. He wasn't. Dean pled guilty to obstruction of justice and admitted supervising payments of, wait for it, hush money.
Yep.
And you said the hush money is especially relevant to the expected charges in New York against Trump. The Watergate hush money was to keep the Watergate burglars from revealing their connection to the Nixon reelection campaign and the White House apologies to John. I hope Michael is as good a witness. Just take everybody through that, because you forget about that part of Watergate, the hush money, right? Well,
Absolutely.
you don't. We do.
Hush money was definitely a major component. And it's really interesting because the reason that they needed to keep the money paying was so that the burglars, who otherwise would have been seen as just burglars breaking in to this strange place, the DNC, but the reason was they had $100 bills on them that were from a cashing of a check, of a campaign check. And so the serial numbers on that could have been traced back to the campaign check that was cashed in Florida by one of the burglars. And that would have been the immediate proof that this was a political crime, that this was the result of the campaign paying the burglars. So they tried to use the CIA to stop the FBI from following the money trail. They tried to keep the burglars themselves from ever testifying who had hired them. And so they kept paying them hush money. And I'm so glad that you pointed out about my praising the credibility of John Dean, because that was what that tweet was all about. And what is absolutely true is that he was completely credible. He made no mistakes. And the same thing is true with Cohn.
Yeah.
He hasn't made any mistakes that have been at least publicly shown to be errors in anything he has testified to under oath. And the same is true for John Dean. He was completely corroborated in everything he said, and the jury believed him and convicted based on his testimony.
And, of course, this clip has surfaced of Trump's present lawyer, Taco Pino, on CNN saying exactly what, we've all been saying. That's ridiculous to think Michael Cohen did this all on his own, just took out a loan and paid off a porn star. Why? Right? I mean, so now, and obviously so it looks like there was communication between Taco Pina and Stormy Daniels. So what does that mean, Jill? What's the word? He has to recuse? He has to, I mean,
Well,
what happens?
it means that there's a conflict of interest,
Right.
and that unless Michael Cohen waives that it's a serious issue. Now, it's very unclear to me whether he ever actually was hired as Michael Cohen's lawyer. It seems that he was never hired as.
Right.
It does seem as if they had a
Well, or Stormy
conversation
Daniels.
about
It looks like Stormy Daniels consulted with him, and the judge is ordering
Stormy-
those
yes,
communications be
but
released.
both did. I
Right.
mean, clearly Michael Cohen did, and the person that we're concerned about now is whether he doesn't seem to have actually represented either of them. Neither hired him, but any conversations about potentially being the lawyer for someone are equally protected by attorney-client privilege. And so the attorney can prevent that lawyer, the client can prevent the lawyer from testifying by
Yeah.
claiming attorney-client privilege.
Yeah.
And any respectable lawyer would not go ahead and
Yeah.
publicly say anything without having a waiver.
You know what I've learned from this is when I get charged with a crime, which I think it's probably a when, I'm going to go consult with every single one of the sisters-in-law, you and Barb McQuaid and Joyce Vance, so that no one else can hire you. To
Exactly.
Yeah,
And so that we can't testify against you
that's
ever.
correct.
But
That's correct.
we wouldn't because we adore you, and it wouldn't happen.
Thank you, Jill. So let's talk about this whole. You retweeted Michael Steele. He said, "I'm tired of hearing any indictment of Trump is unprecedented." Yes, it is, because it's unprecedented for a former president to pay hush money to a porn star. And this his unhinged response. We've seen his desire for violence before, and for the GOP, it's all politically motivated. You just said amen. I mean, I have to say, that was the horrible thing about the Nixon pardon, wasn't it? Is it did prove someone's above the law. And by the way, the American people agreed with you. It's part of, they say now, why, Ford was not elected because people
Yes.
disagreed with him pardoning Nixon,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. I regret that Nixon wasn't indicted because then we wouldn't be talking about it's unprecedented to indict a former president. Um, it's one of those things where he's guilty because the facts show he's guilty because they line up with all the elements of a crime. And it would be unethical for any prosecutor to ignore those facts. And crimes are crimes, they have to be indicted. People have to be held accountable. And being the former president has nothing to do with whether you get indicted or not.
Yeah. And by the way, Joe, I know it's hard for any of us to, know what's happening when anymore. We've just been talking about a bunch of the different cases, but wow, it sure seems like there is a lot going on at once, right? So, Tuesday evening, federal prosecutors in Jack Smith's office presented compelling preliminary evidence that shows Trump knowingly and deliberately misled his own attorneys regarding his unlawful retention of classified documents. Right, Judge Beryl Howell wrote, "This is basically that Evan Corcoran they have to see these communications because of the crime fraud exception." Right?
Exactly. And I think that there's no way that this is going to go in Donald Trump's favor. If you get a court saying you have 6 hours to make your case, you have 6 hours to rebut the case that the defendant is making to the prosecutors, and gives a 6 a.m. deadline to the prosecutors and a midnight deadline last night to Trump's lawyers,
Yeah.
I would predict, maybe not while we're on air right now, but sometime today, there's going to be a ruling that the crime fraud exception means that Corcoran has to testify.
Yep.
And that's going to be very, very important. It is the clearest evidence of absolute obstruction of justice of the investigation of the classified documents, because Corcoran, as is being reported, and of course we don't know anything except what's reported, is that he says Donald Trump told me this, and that's what I put into the affidavit. That
Yeah.
means that Donald Trump, who had a classified evidence in his desk drawer, knowingly lied to his lawyer to say, put this in the affidavit for the federal government. That's obstruction of justice. Clean, clear,
Yeah.
easy case to prove.
So he's on a losing streak, Jill. I mean, which makes me feel like his delay tactics are finally running out. The judge yesterday said no delay in Tish James' case. That will go forward. Trump has lost his final bid to keep key evidence out of the E. Jean Carroll rape trial, correct?
Yes,
It just, boy, it does feel like finally justice is coming, doesn't it? Again, don't know exactly when and where, but
it does.
yeah.
Yeah, it feels that way. And I know from my Twitter followers that people are still holding their breath because every other time, and as you
Yeah.
said, Nixon became a criminal in office. Donald Trump has gotten away with crimes way before he was elected. And so the question is, will he skirt again? Will he have that Teflon that prevents him? I don't think so. I really feel like this is real. And I also feel like even Trump supporters, not all of them, but even some of the MAGA crowd will finally see the facts. Some of the Fox viewers are finally seeing that
Hmm.
Fox lied to them. And they're now starting to say, oh, I no longer believe that the election was stolen.
Hmm.
So maybe there is hope to go back to the era of Watergate when facts
Yeah.
mattered
Yeah.
and
Well,
when
you,
Republicans
you,
believed them.
yeah, you and I have talked about it before. As many people have said, Nixon, wouldn't have probably been impeached or resigned if there were Fox News back then, right? And so I think that's a really key fact. You also, by the way, just in terms of the ongoing danger, Frank Leguzzi was talking about the Waco, that's his first rally. And you
Yes.
said surely he intended to make clear his reason for opening with Waco evil. Um, I mean, obviously he is inciting violence again, and that's why we've got to have justice because he is a clear and present danger, isn't he?
Absolutely. It also raises the question of whoever is first to indict him, yeah, he's not going to be jailed. But a judge might impose some restrictions on his speech because here he is saying, I'm going to be arrested on Tuesday, which we know didn't happen and probably was never intended to. And you should protest. And the last time he called for a protest, you know what happened. It was January 6th. He did not say peacefully protest. He did not say be nonviolent. He just said protest and save our nation. That's the same language he used to
Yep.
cause the January 6th riot. And that led to many deaths, hundreds of injuries, and thousands arrested. So I think that we have to be careful what we let him say, even though I'm a firm believer in the First Amendment.
Yeah.
Sometimes, you can't yell fire in a theater.
Thank you.
You can't yell protest when you're riling up your audience with false information.
Yeah. Jill, let's talk just quickly before we go about Georgia, because we talked before before we got on about that that was always the one people expected first because it's such a strong case, it's on tape, etc. Now you have, as you said, this silly lawsuit, them trying to stop Fani Willis. But what is your take on what is happening there and any expected delay?
I don't know why the delay is happening. At one point, I thought, well, it's because she's waiting for the March grand jury. But that was seated on March 7th. Okay, so we're, more than 2 weeks past that. Then I thought it was maybe she found some new witness and was, turning somebody. And so she was putting more evidence in. But it doesn't seem like there's any justification for the delay. And had she indicted already, we wouldn't be facing this lawsuit to prevent an indictment. We would have seen the evidence. We would have seen the indictment. I don't know what took Merrick Garland so long to appoint a special prosecutor or to take action in the Southern District of New York. I know why he wasn't indicted the former president wasn't indicted in the Southern District while he was president and while the attorney general was his attorney general. But, it's more than 2 years since that attorney general was gone. I don't know what took so long there. I don't know what's taking so long in Georgia. I hope it will happen soon.
Yeah, that is a question for Merrick Garland. Like, if this indictment and all of the evidence that we think we're going to see, you're absolutely right. Why did you continue the wrong that Bill Barr committed by stopping this investigation, right? As everybody says, how can individual one not go to, how can Michael Cohen and not individual one go to jail, right?
Right. Exactly.
By the way, you mentioned what Pence said. There's a crime wave in New York City. The fact that the Manhattan DA thinks indicting President Trump is his top priority tells you everything about the radical left. And you retweeted someone and said, check out his state of the most violent cities. Indianapolis is number 10. New York City is number 59. I mean, it is amazing that they think they can still be the law and order party defending a criminal, right?
Exactly. And not only that, but I mean, Pence is ridiculous because this isn't his priority. It is one of the many cases that he is pursuing. And if he were to ignore it, he would be a negligent DA. Given the publicly available evidence that was there, he had to investigate this. It isn't his top priority, and he isn't letting criminals go. So every part of Pence's statement was just simply wrong. And it is hypocritical for someone from the 10th most dangerous state to be criticizing the 59th.
Yeah.
So it's just, none of it makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Jill, I've gone as long as I possibly can, hoping the indictment would come down now. But you know what? You can hear about it she's on every podcast in the world, including iGen Politics and the wildly popular Sisters-in-Law. Get her book, Watergate Girl, or see her on MSNBC anytime.
Minocqua Brewing Company is excited to partner with Equality Vines to create Choice Wine. Choice Wine comes in 2 choices, Rosé and Sauvignon Blanc. This wine was created to support women's reproductive rights after the Supreme Court rolled back Roe v. Wade in 2022 and caused chaos all over the country. For all you viewers on the Political Voices Network, go to choice.equalityvines.com and type in the promo code PVN to get 10% off on Choice Sauvignon Blanc and Choice Rosé.